Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another Kerfuffle Showcase. I am delighted and excited to have Luke joining us from the other side of the world, as it's affectionately known, from Home Live. How are you, Luke? You okay?
I'm very well, mate. How are you?
Good. Basking
Excellent.
in our English summer. So it's probably only about 4 or 5 degrees colder than your winter there in Sydney.
I was going to say, what's that, a balmy 8 degrees Celsius?
Yeah.
Or what's that?
Pink suntan now, just ready to come out.
I'm glad in the first 10 seconds we've kind of got the rivalry kicked off already. That's great.
That's always well. We're sick of all this innovative tech you keep throwing our way, basically. So yeah. Let's kick straight off into that then, Luke. You want to give us just a bit of background again here in terms of bit of background behind Home Live. What this obviously you're coming across from Australia there, so just give us a brief bit of history about starting there and then why you're coming over here to the UK.
Sure. So where it actually started was that I guess taking a little bit of a step back. So I'd lived in Silicon Valley for many years and recently returned to Australia. Met John Tyson, who subsequently became my business partner. And so we were sort of doing a bit of research and development into augmented reality on phones. Nowadays, that's relatively easy to do. At the time when we were doing this, it was still reasonably complex stuff to figure out. And we built an augmented reality business card video prototype thing. And in our office in Sydney is in a suburb called Double Bay, where there are a lot of real estate agents around. And we it actually just sort of triggered this discussion about real estate, and we thought that might be an interesting product for them. So we literally started walking into real estate offices around our area and just chatting with real estate professionals on the, agents, property managers, office owners, and so forth, about their use of technology. And we almost immediately binned the augmented reality stuff. But what we uncovered was that there was this real gap in the way that technology was supporting real estate professionals. And so we started kind of iterating through that and figuring out ways that we could really sort of pointedly solve that problem. And where we arrived at was a live streaming solution. But I think it's worth kind of thinking about exactly where that fits into the kind of the transaction for agents. And so the way we think about it is you've got awareness, which is what portals do, and signboards and local papers and all of those sort of top of funnel, to use a bit of a nerdy term, but like all of those awareness tools, and they're very good at that. But historically, from that, the next key step has been attendance of some kind. In Australia, it tends to be more open inspections or private inspections or whatever it might be. But between those two steps, you are losing the vast majority of your audience. And you're sort of paying for that audience over and over again. And so we felt that there was a gap in the market between that awareness and attendance around engagement. And so we think of Home Live as being a remote engagement platform. And the key driver of that is through a live streaming experience that's really purpose built for real estate.
And clearly, it's a product of the times. It's never more relevant than obviously what we're all seeing. Lockdown. I mean, we were just talking off camera, weren't we? Obviously, unfortunately for you guys, like in a number of cities here, unfortunately, it has gone back into lockdown, hasn't it?
Yes.
We've had a few of the towns and cities around here sort of similar there. So it's an uneasy picture for us for the time being yet, isn't it? But that does mean that you really need to be making, regardless of the fact whether you think the trend is going forwards, which I think we all accept it is, you need to just be making preparations for that anyway, don't you?
Absolutely. And the way I kind of think about that point in particular is, if we were having this conversation a year ago, then I would talk to you about macro trends of live streaming across industries and all this sort of stuff. And I would say that maybe 5 years from now, live streaming will be a really kind of commonplace, if not ubiquitous, part of real estate discovery and engagement and so on. COVID came, and that whole time frame has just been brought forward, where certainly as a small company, like, our plans have radically changed over the last 6 months as a result of basically the entire world of real estate has kind of been like, oh, okay, we need a different way to kind of continue transacting and interacting with people. And I think really importantly, there is a lot of technology out there that does kind of, I guess, put the agent or the real estate professional into a bit of a side seat, whereas the solution that we really focus on is keeping the agent front and center. They're trying to keep in mind that this is fundamentally a human-powered industry. And so how do you develop tools that will allow real estate professionals to really, bring to the foreground their skill set,
Yeah. Well, let's just pretend that we did have this conversation a year ago, and then we'll look really intelligent in terms of
backdated somehow. Yeah.
The macro trends. I'm all over macro trends. So we called it last year, Luke, if you remember.
I'll send you our information memorandum. It goes into great detail on that. Yeah.
Perfect. Just as a complete aside, and because it's something I'm vaguely interested in, why do you think that augmented reality, certainly to date, has failed to capture the imagination?
Ooh, great question. I think so I think with there's a sort of old adage around like what are the drivers of innovation, and they've sort of been military applications, and porn has sort of always been the sort of joking but not really joking thing about a lot of sort of internet technologies. I think in the case of augmented reality and VR, the use cases have not really been well established. So, and I've kind of been through this before. So the first tech company I was involved in was doing mobile tech, where everyone was sort of still thinking this is what a phone was for. And we started talking about more how it's actually more about this kind of interaction. We take that for granted today, but we had to figure out what those use cases were. It wasn't automatically evident that it was going to have the sort of applications that we use our phones for now. And I think there's a similar thing going on with AR and VR where, there's tremendous potential there. But the hard work is still ahead for us as innovators to kind of figure out what are those really powerful use cases that are not sort of gimmicky and don't really have long-term value. And I think built environments is for sure one of those areas. Like real estate is definitely going to be a driver of some of those technologies. I think the second issue is the interactions have been a little clunky. Like, sort of holding your phone out to kind of view a augmented reality is, in 10 years we'll look back and go, oh my God, that's so retro and weird that we thought that was actually worth doing, And then on the VR side, like I've got a VR machine right here. It's like not everyone's going to make that investment, Of
course. I think, it's interesting, actually. We're seeing a bit of a return of the QR code over here. Obviously,
from COVID as well.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. And actually I don't know whether it's now just because certainly with the latest Apple phones, when you just hold the photo over it rather than having to have a distinct app, it picks it up automatically. And it feels like augmented reality is kind of like where maybe QR codes were a little bit further back, So it's the first wave, obviously, there. Obviously, you go away, learn the lessons, and come back. And again, that's the reason why I asked that question originally was there have been obviously live streaming tools in the past that have tried to get this going, and for whatever reason they haven't captured the imagination. Do you think it literally just comes down to a combination of the technology and the innovation you guys have finally been able to deliver, and that dual effect of actually we absolutely desperately need these things because of the challenge we're facing in the marketplace at the moment and in the wider world?
Yeah, live streaming has, sort of notionally been around for 20 years, right? And so there's always been some version of it. There is definitely a progression of the technology that allows you to deliver like low latency streaming, like real time, kind of like we're doing now. So there is kind of that part to it, but I think the way we think about it is that the actual live stream itself is somewhat of a commodity. In terms of the technical challenges of doing a live stream, they're not massive challenges anymore. It's really the productization around that that's really key. And so, like you might say to me, like, why would I use this instead of Facebook Live or Zoom or something like that? Which is a fair question, because it's kind of, that's what people have had most exposure to right now. And the way I think about that is that, Zoom is a fabulous tool. Like, I don't know how I would continue doing business without Zoom at the moment. And for business applications, it nails it. Facebook Live is different than, it uses a different set of technologies. It's built for a different purpose. And for entertainment applications, it's awesome. Home Live is a purpose-built tool for real estate professionals. So we sweat all of those details about, like a really simple example, right? So we're doing this live stream and there's a bunch of people watching and they can chat to each other while we're talking. Now, that doesn't really translate particularly well in a real estate setting. You don't necessarily want those people to be able to interact with each other or to even be aware of each other. It's really about a set of individual dialogues between the viewer and the agent. So getting all of the details of those things right really matter. That's a very simple example, but there are, we could talk for hours just about all of the stuff behind the scenes, CRM integrations, all of that stuff that is real, and lead capture and all of that.
All that on the face of it, potentially quite boring stuff, but really important stuff to make sure that this delivers, isn't it, as a business application?
Yeah, because ultimately, what are you trying to achieve as an agent or a real estate professional, agent, property manager, developer, what have you? You're trying to, be more effective at either securing properties or selling those properties, right? And so, if that involves saving time, then that's a big tick. If it involves getting a better price or value or whatever, then that's a big tick. If you're going to do a Facebook live stream, the sort of lead follow-up capture, even knowing who they are and all of that stuff is really arduous at best. On the worst case, it's just not possible. So having all of that stuff purpose-built, push back into your CRM where you need it, like that's how you do it properly.
Okay, and how's the public taken to this? Obviously, we know that there's been a lot of take up by the agents.
Sorry, mate, you dropped out a bit there.
I was just going to say, how are the actual? I was just going to say, how are the general public actually receiving it? How are they? What's the feedback they give you and the agents?
So the general public. So anecdotally, it's always been a no-brainer. Like if you say to a person, "Would you like to be able to sort of have a live interaction through a property from the comfort of your own home or in your office or on your phone or whatever?" That's always been a very strong and clear signal for us. We actually decided to get some more specific data points around that recently. So we've just finished a bunch of studies on both the home buyer and renter side and on the vendor landlord side. So I can actually give you some specifics if you want to know. So I've got a couple of highlights here. So the one that really took us by surprise, like I knew this number would be high, but I didn't think it was going to be quite this high, is on the buy side, 97% would prefer to view a live stream prior to any kind of physical inspection.
Yeah.
Even and that's when you include COVID in it. When you take COVID out, it drops to 84%. But that's still an overwhelming number of people who are just like, I don't even want to see the property in person until I can kind of get a bit of a walkthrough and a feel for it and then decide.
And I don't know why we are surprised, but why we should be surprised actually, but because it makes perfect sense if you think about it from your own point of view, but those are really high figures, aren't they?
Yeah, it's very clear. Another one on the buy side is 76% would request a live stream if they knew that was an available option. So I think the takeaway for us from that is that you can't just sort of sit there and expect the general public to ask you for this. You need to kind of send up the signal flare to say, hey, I'm an agent that offers this as a service.
Yeah.
On the vendor side, I think globally this dynamic of, a supply problem or a demand problem is kind of constantly shifting based on lockdowns and fear and all of that stuff. But on the vendor side, we've got 92% of people who have either sold in the last year or intend to sell in the next year. 92% want further qualifying of buyers before anyone's invited into a physical viewing. And the one that really jumped out for me is 79% are more likely to select an agent that offers live streaming than one who doesn't. So if you're trying to get more listings, you got to highlight that you do live streaming.
I mean, definitely. I mean, that's really kind of you to share those stats. We love obviously hearing that straight from the horse's mouth, as it were. Please share those. Put them up on your landing page on the site, because I think those are really, really key figures there for agents to understand. And okay, they're Australian there, but I guarantee they're going to be between.
These are not Australian figures. So we can stratify this by socioeconomic status, by region, by all sorts of things. I can tell you by employment status. Like it's quite comprehensive.
I was just going to say, I thought they were Aussie, and I thought they would be, they would still match very closely, because actually those overwhelming social trends tend to they're very, very close together for countries like ourselves, don't they?
Yes.
Things like how addicted we all are to Facebook, Apple fans, all that. There's not much variance, really, is there, when you look at these sorts of things? That's fascinating. That's really, really interesting there. And do you have many agents over there that use this to drive, if you like, the scarcity value? So trying to, some of our agents over here will have confidential properties, they will have confidential lists. So doing that initial launch to that confidential list of maybe investors and buyers, is that something you've seen developing over there and you expect to see happen here as well?
Yeah, 100%. So what I was saying before about, between the awareness and attendance, that's kind of your conventional marketing strategy. You put it out on the portals and so forth and continue from there. One of the other use cases that we've seen becoming very popular is driving the perceived value of being on a real estate officer's database. Because if you speak to the consumers and say, what is the perceived value of being on one of these databases, it's not that high. And so it's like, well, I get spammed a lot, but if you say we're doing live walkthroughs of these properties, they're not on the market yet, this is a VIP velvet rope kind of experience, and tune in, this is just for our members of our database, all of a sudden the perceived value of being on that database goes through the roof. So I think that is absolutely an important use case, and that comes through in a lot of what we do with Home Live in terms of for example, in Australia, a lot of the real estate marketing costs relate to on a per property basis, whereas we charge on a just flat fee for an agent. So it doesn't have to be wrapped up in the sort of marketing budget discussion with vendors.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense as well. And look, there's clearly a lot of obviously next generation marketing products out there now. Virtual staging, 3D. Where does live streaming fit into that? Is it complementary? Are they competitive? How do you see it all fitting together?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. There's obviously all the conventional, photos and pre-recorded videos and so forth. I guess my take on that is that things like 3D models and so forth, they all kind of sit in the category of a piece of content. And so you create that content and you put it out into the world, wherever your different places are that you market. I guess the issue with those things is that they become commoditized. So as soon as you put it out there, you're putting it into as many places as possible, and the content lives out there, and you're essentially relying on the initiative of home buyers and so forth to reach out to you to say, I'm interested, right? Live streaming is a bit different. It's not just a piece of content, but it's a medium. And so again, back to the question of what is live streaming done properly for real estate mean? I think part of that is that it leverages all of those things. Like, yes, we are we're compatible with all of that. If you're doing those 3D walkthroughs and all that, it's awesome technology. I love all of it. Like, I massively geek out on it, and the folks who build that stuff are amazing. And it's a really nice way to generate that initial awareness of your property that you can then harness in a live stream and say, okay, let's now build rapport with each other. Let's engage. Let me walk you through the property. If you want to ask me to take you out on the balcony and listen for traffic or hear the birds or see a view or whatever, we can do that. You love it. Let's go and tee up a time for you to come and have a look in person.
Okay. And I mean, you've touched on it already, but why Home Live is better than the likes of Facebook or Zoom, as in being specific there. I guess what you were just talking about there, though, as well, is that ability to be able to communicate with the person going around the property, and as I understand it, you can have sort of open questions, can't you? And you can have closed questions. So if you literally just want to ask the agent a specific question and only you know about it, that's possible with your platform, isn't it?
That's right. So unlike Facebook Live or YouTube Live or whatever, we don't indicate the number of viewers, and the questions that are being asked are private between each viewer and the agent. The whole point of that is that it allows the streamer, let's just call them the streamer, to have control over that interaction. So we tend to see that there's sort of two categories of questions that come up. One are what we call the steering questions, where it's like, hey, Simon, can you kind of go back to the balcony for me? Yeah. And then there's the commercial questions like, this is great, can you flick me a contract, or can you call me, or whatever it might be. In both those scenarios, I think it's useful for the streamer to have control over how they curate that. So if you're asking me a commercial question, I can just sort of acknowledge it and say, sure, I'll give you a buzz afterwards. Yeah. Or for the steering questions, it's like, you want to you don't want to break your flow as you're walking through the property and sort of doing your spiel and getting all the key touch points. You can say, a few of you are asking me to return to the balcony, so I'll just finish whipping around and then I'll take you out there. And if you've got any more questions, we can cover them there as well. It's really about allowing the streamer to, do it the way they want to do it, while being sensitive to the questions that they're getting along the way. Yeah.
Well, after having seeded, obviously, cricket excellence back to the UK, I think that's probably overstretching it, actually. I would always have to concede that real estate in Australia is a fantastic experience. I mean, I know I am a train spotter in the best possible, but to go there and see auctions as they are done in Melbourne and Sydney, it's going to be a long, long time before we even see that kind of thing happening here. But what I do find very interesting about this live streaming is that it does, and obviously lots of agents are doing things like open homes at the moment, is you can really see personalities developing in the way that you do have with those auctioneers over there, in the way that people are taking people around, can't you? And it really does allow the personality of the agent and the agency to come to the fore. Do you think that is an aspect that will just continue to develop with this kind of live streaming, so that it doesn't become moribund?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we emphasize right up front, we have a whole sort of onboarding and customer success that wraps around, when someone signs up to it, we have sessions from intros to, setups and pro tips and all that kind of stuff. One of the things we really make sure that we highlight early on is that this should be very conversational in its style. People really value authenticity. So it doesn't need to be, the slow motion, panning shot, drone, this and all. Like, all of that has its place. But for these particular interactions, it's just like we're two humans talking to each other, and people really value that stuff. I think when, if someone's not super comfortable being in front of a camera, it takes a little while, which is why we do practice streams with them. There's a whole practice area in the product, so you can literally just stream to yourself at home and just get used to it and see which angle looks best and all of that stuff. But then as you kind of loosen up a little, then your personality can shine through. And I think that will absolutely be a part of, I guess, the proposition to vendors to say, I've got this following of home buyers or renters or whatever it might be, and I'm a comfortable live streamer. We'll probably surface more of that kind of data for agents over time, so that they can sort of better summarize their live streaming presence, I guess.
It's incredible, though, isn't it? The amount of agents that I talk to who literally talk about having a pathological fear of going on camera, and oh, I'm not going to be any good when we go into the interview. And actually, the cameras go on, and they do kind of just switch into game
Snap
mode.
into it. It's funny you say that. We literally had that happen earlier today. So we were sort of going through some onboarding, slightly different use case for us, and we're always excited to do that. So our product team jumps in, and we've got our customer success people watching, and just because it was, as I say, a slightly different use of Home Live, and we just kind of want to see if we should evolve the product in that direction a little more. Yeah. But anyway, the person doing the stream texted Georgia, one of our customer success people, and she's like, "I'm really nervous, like I'm about to do a live stream." And Georgia was like, "You're going to kill it. Don't worry. It's going to be great." And sure enough, she starts the stream. She's funny. She's like, the property looked fantastic. Like she hit all the angles of the property right. Like everything was fantastic. I was like, I think you just, you need to kind of get over that hurdle.
Agents just don't understand that's what they do, isn't it? Their day-to-day job is having a commentary, bringing to life about the things about the property itself. And actually, okay, it might feel a micro moment of uncomfort when you're doing it live to camera, but it genuinely is one of those things that once you break that barrier, you're just off, aren't you?
Absolutely. And it's just like this. I mean, I remember the first time I did a video call on a laptop, and I kind of wanted to like pick the computer up and hold it to my ear, and it just felt so unnatural. But now it's very awkward to hold a phone up to your ear because you just get so used to it. And again, I guess coming back to the sort of onboarding and customer success side, another thing we say is if you are comfortable walking someone through in person, which you almost by definition are because that's a key part of your role, it's just the same thing. You're just mediated through a piece of technology. The ultimate version of Home Live means that you're not even really aware of the piece of technology. You're just kind of talking, That's when technology's at its best, isn't it? When it's almost invisible. Yeah, that's really interesting. And Luke, the team, as they all when they get me, believe it or not, I do preparation. They wanted me to. Sarah off camera says, "Look, you really need to get your head around smart embedding and make sure you talk about smart embedding." So I'm hot potatoing this back to you now. Luke, what is smart embedding? What is smart embedding?
Why should I be paying so much attention to it?
Okay, so I'll explain what it is, and then I'll explain why it's important. So smart embedding is, we've got this proprietary way that we can push your live feeds wherever you need to, right? So the main use case for this is if you're an office that is Home Live enabled, we'll work with you to make smart embedding available on your website. What that means is when you do a live stream, it will automatically come to Home Live in that given country. So homelive.co.uk, home.com.au, and so forth in the various countries we're operating in. It will also go to our global site. So irrespective of which country you're in, it goes to the global site as well to, I guess, have a more suitable angle for international buyers. Our mobile apps. And then if you've got smart embedding, then it will appear on the correct property listing page of your own site. Okay. So, I mean, to try and replicate that as an individual office would be ludicrously expensive. It's just like the cost of trying to do all of that R&D just doesn't make sense. So we've got this sort of plug and play type option. There's a little bit of technology work, but very minor. And so why that's important is that it really comes down to brand continuity. And so if you think of it from the office's perspective or the individual agent, property manager, whatever, introducing a new brand into your kind of messaging can be a little bit complex. And, there's already a lot that you're trying to focus the buyers on. So to say, I'm doing live streams, go to homelive.co.uk. And so it does add a little bit of complexity to it. Obviously, it's not a huge amount, but there's some. If you can say, I'm at simonrealestate.co.uk, go here to view my properties. Here you can view my live streaming schedules. You can register your interest. And at showtime, you can actually go to the site and watch me do the live stream in context. So you've got the live stream playing with the property images and all the other collateral that you've developed for that property. It's all happening in the one place, and it's powered by Home Live, and you get all of the same sort of features that you would get otherwise. So all the messaging's in there, all of the, the lead capture is in there, you get a transcript of all the questions afterwards, you get a recording of the video, all of that stuff is available, but we place it on your site. So it's a very powerful extension to the product for sure.
I can see how that works, yeah. And then in terms of, it is a completely standalone product, isn't it? Are you looking at integrations? Is there a reliance on other integrations to get the most out of it, or what's your thinking on that?
So it is a standalone product. So sort of behind the scenes, you can add properties in there. You can do all of your lead management, all your scheduling. The whole platform will just kind of work by itself. The smart embedding I've touched on about, that's sort of the end user facing side of it. Our view with respect to things like contacts and lead data and all that kind of stuff, what's the best option for the real estate professionals is they don't want to have silos of this data in a bunch of different places. So our preference is always to push that to wherever it's most useful for you as an agent. Okay. So if you have a CRM, if that CRM can be integrated with, we'll push the data back there. If that's what you want, maybe you want to keep it silent. Once you do a live stream, you'll get an email afterwards with all of that information attached. So you'll see all of everyone who attended and all that kind of thing. But yeah, if you want to integrate that, then that's certainly a possibility. I guess the other one thing I'll just touch on briefly as well is, I guess as a philosophy, the live stream belongs to the streamer in our view. And so our job as a company is to help that stream proliferate as far and wide as they want it to. So it may be that for their purposes, they just want it to go to their own site or just to our sites. But it may be that they want to also send it to their portal listings or wherever it might be. And so we try and support that as much as possible. So if that's something that if people want it to be on a particular third-party site, then we'll do our best to work with those folks to get the stream pushed there as well.
What do you recommend as best practice? I mean, there's the obvious: put it up on the website, put it out on social. Do you see any sort of innovative ways that people use that? Do you see people, for example, targeting their database to look at past clients and potentially keep them updated? What sort of best practice tools, methodologies do you see out there?
I think the people who do it best are the people who really kind of internalize the idea that their website is their digital presence and they orient everything around that. So, I mean, social networks are fantastic because you've kind of got this plug-in audience, but it's a little part of your online presence that lives elsewhere. And so to the extent that you can try and consolidate that, I think it's a powerful thing. Now that's really hard to do. You're up against these multi-$100 billion companies that are vying for that attention. But I think for real estate professionals, if they have a professional site, they have content that's going to that site that's enticing and creating value creating for an audience, people will go to it. Especially if you have the toolkit to market that properly as well. So I should probably touch on that. That's another aspect of how we help our customers, is that we have a whole toolkit available that allows you to sort of effectively market your streaming schedule. And that is, in some instances, completely not technology based. It's like design templates and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay, that again is really powerful, isn't it? Because agents, I think, all over the world are looking at ways they've ceded all of this control and influence to the property portals like realestate.com, like Rightmove, like Zoopla here, and how do they get people again engaging with their own websites? Well, this is another way of really creating a bit of excitement and biz back in that, isn't it? So
yeah, and it's time specific, right? So how before I was saying that the content is commoditized, right? So if you take photos, those same photos will be on your site and every other place where you market that property. Whereas the live stream, you can really sort of say 2 o'clock on Tuesday, I'm doing a live stream, come to my office site to view that, you know, that's quite powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, too many prop tech companies and suppliers in general get accused of, you know, delivering just solutions for technology's sake.
Very true.
Yeah, well, it just happens so often, doesn't it? You know, that they just because they can technically be done doesn't mean that commercially they should be. So, cutting to the chase with this, have you seen that this actually does help agents close deals?
Yeah, I mean, it is tricky to sort of quantify that really honestly, because when you do this right, it becomes a very integrated part of the experience. And so, you know, I don't want to overstate. You know, it's like, well, what percentage of that success came from us doing our part of the job? You know, ultimately, we're just helping the real estate professionals, you know, sort of connect better. So, having said that, yeah, it's very clear that, I mean, there was some of the stats I was saying. So in terms of securing properties, unequivocally, you know, it's if you signal that you're an agent that does live streams, that will help you win business. You know, I got an email from an agent yesterday. He's actually put it into his email signature, you know, I forget the exact wording, but, you know, like, I conduct live streams of my properties. So I think he's, you know, I can't sort of wrap numbers around that, but it's very clear that he's benefiting from that being part of his kind of sales pitch. On the sort of interaction with the buyers, I guess another part of that interesting interaction is that there are some people out there who want to report the largest number of people possible walking through a property because that indicates that they're doing the job well. I think we really, beg your pardon?
I was just saying, it's the wrong statistics. It's like that point you mentioned earlier. So many agents talk about, they kind of brag about the fact that they've got 40,000 people in their database. But as ever with all of these points, it's the engagement that comes off the back.
How many are engaged? Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, I think we kind of need to, you know, really once and for all jettison that idea of just having a zillion people walk through the property is somehow a positive. Especially because really clearly that's not what vendors want. They want to have a really effective pre-selection tool that they can say, okay, we're going to have a subset of people come through and they are serious buyers. They've already experienced the property in a few different ways through still photography, through a live stream, etc. And now they've sort of qualified themselves through that process, and now they're really coming to kind of inspect the home as a real candidate.
Yeah, and look, it's just a traditional funnel thing, isn't it? You get people in at the top, you obviously validate them and then move them further down and down. But it's making best use of your time and doing it efficiently, which is the key here.
Yes, and especially I understand that open inspections are not done universally. Open inspections are, I guess, a little bit helpful in that respect of, you know, it makes the funnel a little less extreme. But when you're doing only private inspections, it kind of goes from very wide to like this.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah,
and you can get a lot of tie kickers in there as well.
Yeah, look, the amount of times you're 15, 20 private viewings for a sale is, you know, is a huge resource issue there. So it can only make sense that if you can validate it properly to maximize the serious buyers.
Absolutely. And look, the other element of that is, I don't have any numbers on hand, but in the studies we've done, we've talked about international buyers and interstate buyers and so forth. And you know, it's like, how do you buy property? How do you buy an investment property that's not in your local area? It's really, really inefficient. Like, all of the inefficiencies that we talk about get dialed up massively when you start talking about investment, because you know, like, it may be that your local area doesn't represent a great investment opportunity at the moment, but you want a part of your wealth invested into real estate.
Yeah.
You know, pain. I won't swear on live stream, but, you know, it's a real pain. Sorry?
You're on the right show for swearing, don't worry.
Okay. Have you got one of those little beep buttons? But you get my drift. Like, you know, if you can have an international audience, that really adds to the value of it. And so that's certainly part of our thinking. And, you know, I touched before on our international roll-up site so that you can experience the live streams from wherever in the world they're taking place. They all happen, you know, on that site as well. So that's home.live.
And that will only increase over time as well, won't it? As the awareness builds and everything else, and people do become much more used to doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's likely, you know, that you will start to get the agent as celebrity kind of phenomena start to evolve a little further, where, you know, if you can see Home Live in a few years from now, where you've got agents streaming all over the world, and you can sort of tune into that and maybe signal that you're not a buyer, but you're a viewer who is interested. And it starts to almost take on a bit of an entertainment quality as well. All of which I think is really positive and supportive for the industry.
Yeah. Albeit I've been to plenty of sort of entertainment-based things, like for charity auctions, and ended up going home with far too much that I didn't intend. So there's bound to be, even with that audience, there's bound to be some passive business created, isn't there?
No doubt. Especially, yeah, I mean, because again, that human element is maintained. So, you know, whether that property is of interest to that particular property to that particular viewer, that's not the beginning and the end of the value chain between those two people. You know what I mean? So it could be that translates into an opportunity to work together 6 months later.
Cool. And you mentioned the customer success team. Just talk us again what somebody would expect. They obviously want to have a demonstration with you, but they sign on the dotted line. What happens next? And how long does it take normally to
get set up?
Yeah.
So it really kind of depends on how you want to do it. But like in the simplest form, we have self-serve registration and onboarding. So you can go, and if you're, you know, that sort of Pathfinder agent in an office, you can, and you're the only one who wants to do this by yourself, you can come in the front door of the site, you can register yourself, you can get set up, you can be streaming in 10 minutes. You know, It's super straightforward. You know, we've just gone live with the whole Remax Australia network, and so I think we've just Home Live enabled another 450 odd people in the last few weeks. Wow. So obviously those sorts of enterprise integrations are a little bit more involved. We you know, all the smart embedding, all that kind of stuff, we really kind of lean into working with their teams to make that you know, very, very polished. But you know, in the simplest sense, when someone wants to start streaming, they sign up, they get their account, download the app, and then there's these onboarding sessions that just run continually. So you can jump in if you just want to start at first principles, and it's just like, all of this stuff is kind of a bit weird to me. I don't really feel that comfortable. I kind of know that I need to get on board with it, but I'm a little resistant to it. There's an intro session that just goes through the fundamentals of like, let's talk about what live streaming is, you know, like no stupid questions kind of thing. And then there's onboarding sessions where it's, you know, here's how you run a test stream, make sure your system's working. You know, here's how you schedule and effectively market your live streams, all of those sessions. And then I think I touched on earlier, there's the pro sessions. You know, what my sort of go-to example of this is walking up and down flights of stairs during live streams tends to be dead time. So it can be a little bit awkward. That is exactly when you should be, just before that, you should be asking people if they have any questions, because it's a great time for people to kind of tap away and ask some questions while you're covering that flight of stairs.
Yeah, that makes perfect
those little refinements that you just kind of figure out as you kind of do more and more of it. And we kind of help shortcut that process so you can be streaming like a pro in no time.
Perfect. And is there account management ongoing, you know, the ability to talk to you guys and ask, you know, how they can be improving and things like that still?
Oh, massively. So there's live chat on the site. There's a whole video tutorial section. We've got our customer success team is available, you know, like their sole purpose is to help you stream more effectively, get better results out of it. And we are really a very product-led company. And so, when we get a piece of feedback, we take that really, really seriously, and we sort of bat it about. We might come back to you. Like, kind of everyone we work with has sort of become, in some small or big way, a contributor into how we evolve the product. So, and that will for always be kind of the way that we do things.
Yeah, I've seen a lot from Australian companies. You do take that customer's satisfaction element extremely seriously. And I mean, cutting to the chase there, Lou, how much does it cost for UK agents to get involved with this?
So we've got a couple of different pricing options. So there's just a straight per license one. So if you're an individual who wants to stream, it's £29 a month or £290 a year.
Okay.
That's unlimited properties, unlimited streaming. You just go nuts, like, and that's kind of our.
That's all you can eat. It's the Homer Simpson all you can eat model, which I particularly like, obviously.
Yeah, and not to sort of sidetrack on this too much, but I do feel like there's been a lot of very aggressive pricing in the industry, and I think fair and reasonable pricing is kind of a little bit novel in and of itself. Like, let's just charge a fair amount of money for it, and hopefully you get way, way, way more value than what we charge for it. So that's the per agent pricing, or per seat. Then we've got office pricing as well. So, excuse me, that's £150 a month or £1,500 a year, and that's for unlimited professionals as well. So that can, if you've got a bigger team, then exceedingly good value for money there. And then we have a special deal for Kerfuffle as well.
Oh, tell me, I'd like Kerfuffle deals.
That's very surprising to me. I never would have guessed. So we're doing an offer. It's £1 for the first 2 months.
Okay.
Whether you're an agent or a office, you can use it for £1 a month.
That's about as competitive as it gets, isn't it, really? That's value for money. So really, anyone who's thinking about trying this, as I said, I really like your idea there that, the business principles might not be overly excited, but if there was somebody who was keen to give this go themselves, obviously that you can accommodate that as well. So I think that's really, really good. And obviously in this day and age, it's a case of not waiting until, dare we say it, there is another lockdown thing. We know this is going to be embedded for the future anyway. So, now's the time to get on board with that, isn't it? For the, not just the end of the year, but for the future.
For sure. And I mean, one of the things that we see, and there's no end to the joy that this brings us, is that when you're talking about innovative stuff like this, it's often kind of like the youngest person in the office who is kind of calling the shots with this. And so often we go in to meet with the team, and it's kind of, someone who's in their early 20s sort of advising the principal about, this is legit, these guys, they're not talking crazy, and so, by and large, we're finding that the office owners and the real estate groups are very, positive about all of this, because we are really trying to highlight them. This comes back to the smart embedding. It's like we're trying to put that emphasis back onto their own digital presence. So just to be clear, we're not getting a lot of resistance on that front. Yeah. But if it is one of those things where you've just got individuals or just small offices, or it might be husband and wife duo have their own office, for those guys, £29 a month, it's a very affordable way to do things. And I'll just add that that's just for the streaming seats. So generally we say you should put your whole team on the platform, but like marketing and admin staff and so forth, they're all free seats. So they can do things like scheduling and team management. The system allows you to manage all of that stuff automatically.
You're really paying for what you're actually using. I get that. Okay,
it's just the streaming seats, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Luke, thank you very much for spending the time with us today, explaining all of that. I'm certainly
my pleasure.
lot more clued up on that. I encourage anyone to get in contact. Go via the landing page, obviously, on Kerfuffle. Go to Home Live. Have a look at their website as well. Just mention us if you want to take advantage of that deal. Luke, if you could share those, and please in the future, just keep us up to date with any more of those stats and that research, because that's some really interesting stuff.
We've got a lot of it. We'll share it for sure.
Great. We'll get that up on a blog for you as well. So best of luck with it, and we'll stay in contact, and it'll be really interesting to see how this develops, and we'll certainly ask for some people to give us live feedback in the next session as well, and start seeing how people are using it.
Fantastic. Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Have a good one. Cheers, mate.
Bye-bye.